Welcome to Fantasy Focus. Today's podcast is presented by Geico. You can watch us every weekday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time on ESPN's Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube feeds, as well as the ESPN app. And you can download Fantasy Focus wherever you get your podcasts. Happy Friday, November 19th. Field, Matthew, Stephania, and Daniel are all here. Full show.
Yeah, it's an exciting Friday show. Real quickly, before we start, Field Minister Yates, I have a question for Daniel Dopp and Stephania Bell, who were not on the show on Wednesday, the last time I appeared.
Yep.
I'm going to start with Stephania Bell. If I say the phrase, hey, you know what I'm doing tonight? I'm going to a bar to see a really great ska band. Do you understand what I just said?
I do. We had a conversation yesterday.
Did you?
Weren't here.
I download. I don't listen.
Well, I don't know that it was on air, but I was talking about saying that these guys, meaning like Field and whoever else hadn't heard.
Kyle.
Had probably heard of bands who were influenced by it, and I said, no doubt is a band that
Mighty Boss Tones.
Yeah.
Oh, I know them.
Exactly.
Right? I mean,
Mighty Boss Tones is definitely a ska band. Real Big Fish is a big ska band.
Oh, really?
You probably have heard of.
I know them too, yeah.
And the group that I mentioned yesterday, Suburban Legends, which is this obscure ska band that I really like, they toured with Real Big Fish. They've toured and opened up for Real Big Fish a number of times. They're out of Orange County. Shout out to my guys, Suburban Legends. It's just a small band that when I used to live in LA, I used to see them all the time, and I've just followed them for years. And they're just a fun group. I was kids. They're all like in their, they're like probably late 30s now or whatever.
They're probably my age now,
in
in all honesty. I listened to them on the way in to the show this morning, Matthew, and it was fun. Like ska music is just fun. It puts you in a good mood, man.
Yes. Good vibes.
Yeah,
good vibes.
It is very much a good vibe.
Very good vibe. A lot of horns, upbeat guitar.
I'm a huge ska fan since Wednesday, but I'm a huge ska fan. I just
couldn't believe. Daniel and I talked about this yesterday on the fantasy show. New episode of the fantasy show, by the way, on ESPN Plus, streaming now. We talked about this, like that we couldn't believe.
The police have a bunch of ska influences in their band that everybody knows of.
Right.
You might not realize that.
Yes, I have. My knowledge, like I said, like if you're looking for like things that I know that are obscure, like test me on where NFL players went to college. Don't test me on bands, but I do know the Police, and I know the Mighty Boss Tones, of course, and Real Big Fish, and no doubt, like that's four that I know.
Right. It was just, it's not that you need to know bands. Like I would get my butt kicked by Daniel in a music contest.
Right.
But I'm just saying, like, it's a genre of music. It's not like I can't believe you never heard of this band.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I would have actually been shocked had you heard of Suburban Legends. But I'm just saying, the fact that you hadn't heard of an entire genre of music, like if I said, like, oh, I'm going to see this country band tonight, and you're like, what's country?
No, it's not that. That's a little bit of a stretch.
I will say this, and we need to get to football, trust me.
Yeah, we're down to football.
Ska was a little bit more of like a fad type of a thing. There are some super diehard ska fans, that people that still love it to this day. But it definitely was like, it went,
Thank you, Daniel.
It came and then it went, and then it kind of goes back and forth, kind of a thing.
There's no question. There are certainly more well-known and more popular, but it just feels like, I don't know.
I just think this is what it comes down to.
What's that, Stephania?
This is going to put the bow on it. Matthew wants to celebrate that for once. He's hip to something that Field is not.
I'm
Matthew,
done.
And you wore the shirt on my birthday. I appreciated it so much. It made my heart very happy to see that you did that. So thank you.
Go.
Let's talk football.
There you go.
As Thursday Night Football is now in the books.
The reason why we did that open for so long is because Thursday Night Football sucked, and we just don't want to talk about it.
It really did. That was brutal.
The two highest scoring players from last night in fantasy were the Patriots defense and Nick Folk, because the Patriots take care of business 25-0. The Patriots defense scores 26 fantasy points, like 10 of which came in the last 2 minutes of the game. They were excellent. They were awesome last night. Let's get into the stuff that matter.
I was texting with our good buddy Scott Clark, of course,
who's playing
_Biz.
God. Yeah.
And we were texting during the game, and he's just like, I'm playing against the Patriots defense. And then he's just like, so he's miserable. And then after he texts me that, then they get the pick six. Then they get like 2 more interceptions and a sack. I mean, like, Patriots defense was awesome last night, as was Nick Folk.
By the way, everybody who's listening to the show right now, you get one guess, and I'll reveal who it is at the end of our Thursday Night Football recap as to which player in the War Room League rosters the Patriots defense. Just think about the names that we've mentioned that are part of the league.
Yeah.
We'll reveal at the end of the Thursday Night Football recap who it is. I'm sure you will guess it right. So Mac Jones goes for just 10.8 fantasy points last night, 10.4, excuse me. Jones, listen, he looks the part. He's going to be a really good player. I think his time is eventually coming as being a fantasy asset, but right now better in terms of accuracy and in terms of, like, generally speaking, making the right decisions than he is in terms of putting up 300-plus yard or 3 touchdown
He doesn't have
efforts.
anything with his legs, and it's today. And in today's NFL, it is hard to be a pocket passer and be fantasy relevant in a standard 10 or 12 team 1 quarterback league, unless you are passing at a high volume. And given how well the Patriots run the ball and play defense, it's hard to see Mac Jones getting to that kind of volume. Having said all that, if I were a Patriot fan, I would feel really, really good. And if I were, say, I don't know, a 49ers fan, I would be like, wow, maybe we should have done that. Maybe the internet shouldn't have made fun of us for thinking about Mac Jones at 3.
We can rehash the 2021 NFL draft at a different time. I'm still a believer in Trey Lance, but Mac Jones did become the first rookie ever to throw for 80+% completion percentage in back-to-back games with a minimum of 15 attempts. He's super impressive.
And I'm so annoyed, by the way. You guys can go back and look at this. If you look at anything I said pre-draft, pre-NFL draft, and I was talking about, and people were asking me, what do you want Washington to do at 17? I said, I'm really hoping Mac Jones falls there.
Right.
I really would love Mac Jones to fall there. And he went to 15 at the Patriots. Stupid Nick Saban, calling up Bill Belichick and saying, this guy's good. Thanks, Nick Saban.
Gosh,
keep your big trap shut. And maybe he falls to 17 in Washington.
Yeah, it would have been a good fit there, too. Let's get to the Patriots running backs who do have fantasy relevance week in and week out. Damien Harris last night returned to action after a 1-game absence. Rhamondre Stevenson and Damien Harris basically had a timeshare last night as they went drive. It was basically Harris in, Stevenson out, and then vice versa on the next drive. Harris ends up playing 24 snaps to 19 for Rhamondre Stevenson. Damien Harris, each one of them got 1 catch for you. Stevenson had the total yards edge, 75 to 65, Matthew. So it's sort of discouraging in the sense that, like, if it's going to be a timeshare, it's going to be harder to know, A, which one to start, or B, whether either of them will carry. Like, they both play well last night.
Yeah, they did.
And neither one of them cashed in. I will say, though, and I know you took to Twitter on this, like, can't you envision a world a couple of years from now where Rhamondre Stevenson is just mashing as like a top 10 fantasy running back?
1,000%.
That's good.
He like Damien Harris looked really good.
And he's a really good player, yeah.
And he's a really good player. Rhamondre Stevenson just feels like he's got an extra gear, and there's a more well-rounded player. Just feels like there's more to his game than Damien Harris. And that's not taking anything away from Damien Harris, but I agree with you that if you and I started a dynasty draft right now, I would draft Stevenson ahead of Damien Harris, but for our purposes, yeah, it's a little bit frustrating. What you hope is that, like, I think if either one of them had gotten into the end zone last night, you feel a little bit different about it. And also, by the way, if Stevenson had just caught a few more passes, maybe you feel differently about it as well. One of the issues is that, first off, both the Patriots ran well, and there didn't seem like there was a ton of possessions in that game. There were a lot of sustained drives. It was weird. There were a lot of sustained drives by the Patriots, but then the Falcons kind of played this bend, don't break defense where eventually, like somewhere around the 30, they just wouldn't convert a third down, the Patriots, and that's why Nick Folk had such a huge game. Yeah. And so in a game in which maybe it's a little bit faster paced, or and that the Patriots have more possessions, maybe it works out a little bit better. But certainly I think I feel like if you have Damien Harris on your roster, you feel worse than you did going into last night's game. And I feel like if you had Stevenson on your roster, you feel better than you did going into last night's game because I think his role has increased somewhat and Harris's has decreased.
But at the same time, I don't feel great if I roster either one of them if Bolden got 16 of the touches of the snaps either. So
I'm not surprised by that though, right? Like we talked about this yesterday. Like he's going to play on passing situations and it's going to eat into them a little bit. But I do think there's still an opportunity though for Stevenson and Harris to retain flex or better value just because, like, if it's a 50-50 split, like the Patriots are going to overwhelm some teams. Like it may not necessarily be their next couple of games. I think they play Tennessee next week and then Buffalo, but like imagine them playing against like Jacksonville in future weeks, Indianapolis. Well, I guess Indy's a pretty good team, but I don't know. Maybe like if it's a team in which they're decided favorites against, I'd feel pretty comfortable playing both of them in at least a flex spot.
Yeah, but I think that's the case, right? Is that I think Damien Harris and by the way, like I didn't even notice this, but right, Patriots bottom 10 in terms of pace of play for the season. So just a stat to give you what we've sort of all saw with our own eyes. I feel like prior to his injury, Damien Harris was bordering on top 10 running back viability. I mean, just he'd scored like in 5 straight or something like that.
5 straight games, yeah.
And so no longer an RB1, like low-end RB2, high-end flex. Both of them are. Yeah. But Stevenson, I think, has played his way into flex consideration. Harris has dropped down into flex consideration. Still usable, but yes, certainly his fantasy value took a hit last night.
The easiest way to describe it is Rhamondre Stevenson and Damien Harris, good for the Patriots. Bad for fantasy football.
Fair
like
enough.
In terms of like the dynamic it creates for us and having to choose which one to put into our lineup. Pass catchers last night, Nelson Agholor 5 for 40 with a touchdown. Jakobi Meyers 4 for 39. Hunter Henry 2 for 25 last night. As Mike Clay was describing yesterday, sort of a tight, is like Robert Tonyan last year. Needs a touchdown to cash in.
Correct.
But none of those Patriots wide receivers were like lock it in starters as it were. I think Jakobi Meyers was the highest in our consensus ranks going into yesterday at like 37. Feels like last night's a good reason why. Good group. Just it's hard to figure out who's going to be the dominant guy if there will be one week in and week out.
Kendrick Bourne also 4 for 42, and he got the one run. You know,
what are you going to? I mean, they're all like. One of them could they're better daily plays than they are season-long plays. How about that?
That is correct. One of them's going to score in a given week, and it's hard to know which one. I still would prefer Jakobi Meyers going forward. You know what I mean? Yeah. But nice game for Nelson Agholor for those that started him.
Falcons tough watch last night. Obviously, nor Cordarrelle Patterson. I do want to see Stephania this was weird because he's warming up in game pants before the game, and everybody's like, oh wow, he could be playing, right? And then he was deactivated. Like, do we get any sense? Like, would you infer that if a player is warming up in game pants, halfway to being fully in uniform, does that suggest to you that he's probably he's close? Like we could see him next week? Or do you think that's just what players do sometimes?
No, I think it's probably a sign that he's close. And I think the fact that we went back and forth on this, but it does point out that that early report from Tom Pelissero of NFL Network was accurate, that they didn't have high optimism for his availability this week, that it might be a couple of weeks. And then we sort of went back and forth in terms of what he was able to do in practice. But it could be one of those things where they just wanted to get him a pregame workout and they already knew that they weren't going to activate him. They just didn't share it with us. It could also be that they really wanted to give him a chance to test it. Sometimes it's hard to read the tea leaves clearly from a distance.
All righty. So no Cordarrelle Patterson last night, Matthew.
10 days to get ready for next week, though. So we hope to have Patterson back next week.
Man, was his value highlighted last night, by the way, right? I mean, the Falcons were just a mess offensively. Matt Ryan has struggled in back-to-back weeks, Matthew. I mean, he was hot for a while there.
Yeah.
Pretty clear, though, that he's going to be a matchup-dependent streaming quarterback at best. And
very matchup dependent.
With this
he turned
offensive
into a pumpkin
line
last night.
He did. I mean, that offensive line was just
he's already a pumpkin,
overwhelmed.
so he remained a pumpkin.
He remained one, yes.
Fantasy pumpkin.
Fantasy pumpkin. That's not a good thing to be.
No.
The Falcons running backs, though, I thought there was a chance one running back would sort of pop last night for Atlanta. The answer was none of them did. Qadree Ollison had 5.4 fantasy points. Yeah. That was more than Mike Davis. He played more snaps than Mike Davis last night. So Mike Davis was a guy that we thought had a chance to have a role coming into this season, Matthew. I like the player still, but the way that offense is operating, the offensive line, what do you do with Mike Davis now?
Welcome to Dumpsville.
Gotcha.
He's rostered in 71% of leagues. What are we doing, people? Seriously. Because right now, prior to this week, the only argument for Mike Davis was, well, what happens if something happens to Cordarrelle Patterson? All right, well, something happened to Cordarrelle Patterson, and Mike Davis was still ineffective.
Yeah.
At any point, do you feel good about starting Mike Davis at any point in the future? They called the guy up from the practice squad and gave more work than Mike Davis last night.
Yeah, it was weird.
And again, as we said, this offense just looks broken. And so, look, they played the Cowboys and then they played the Patriots, two pretty good defenses. I mean, they should have been able to move the ball a little bit more against the Cowboys, but whatever. They just got blown out bad and they just sort of packed up their bags and left. But I don't know that you ever feel that the narrow window in which you're going to have to find yourself in to feel good about starting Mike Davis, which is a good matchup for the Falcons and Cordarrelle Patterson is out. I'm just not wasting a roster spot on that guy.
Yeah, it's obvious that if Patterson's out, they're not going to turn to him exclusively. As a result of that, probably can pass.
He should not be rostered. I mean, 71% of leagues, and that should be a lot lower. I would much rather. By the way, Qadree Ollison looked better than Mike Davis last night.
Definitely did.
I mean, he wasn't good, but he was better than Mike Davis.
Yeah.
Tough sledding last night for the entire Atlanta Falcons running game. The passing game was not much better. Russell Gage managed 9.9 fantasy points. Kyle Pitts, 3 for 29. You had a feeling, right? What the Patriots going to do? Shut down your best weapon.
He was on the hate list for a reason this week. It was the lowest I'd ranked Kyle Pitts all season long, and so yeah, I mean, they just shut it down, like, which is not surprising, right? Here's a concern about Kyle Pitts: 1 red zone target in his past 5 games.
Yeah, I mean, they're so
the
bad
offense
right
is
now.
struggling, right?
So bad. God, they're such a tough watch.
Yeah.
I mean, that was you're painful. Like, how did this team win 4 games? What I was thinking last night, right? Like, good Lord. You probably still have the problem is, Matthew, that the averages are he's now just a little under 15 yards per catch, that there are so few tight ends who present not the touchdown upside, but the chance for 50 receiving yards in a game upside like Kyle Pitts does. So you probably still have to start him, Daniel, but it's not pretty right now.
Sorry, the floor recognizes Daniel Dopp. Yes, sir.
So I called Mike Rothstein on the way in today. He covers the Falcons for us. And I just asked him from a fantasy perspective. I'm like, Mike, we just watched your team look awful.
Yeah.
What would you do here? He said 2 things. He said, 1, Mike Davis is droppable.
Yep.
So it was cool to hear you say that, Matthew, because there's an agreement there. 2, he said they are waiting for Calvin Ridley to come back to this team to be able to open up this offense, because until Calvin Ridley comes back, Kyle Pitts cannot do this on his own, and they do not have enough people other than Cordarrelle Patterson. He is the only guy that you can count on in fantasy. They need someone to help unlock that offense, and that offensive line is brutal. That offensive line is just awful for Matt Ryan.
So two quick questions, 2 reactions to that. 3 reactions. First off, Daniel bragging about the fact that you have Mike Rothstein's phone number. I'm like, come on, what are we doing? I mean, just whatever.
We just play
whatever, it's fine. Whatever.
What are you going to do, huh?
I'm just teasing.
Anyway, cut to Mike Rothstein. Jeez. Catching an errant Matt Ryan pass to the face right now. Good Lord. No, Felipe Franks or Josh Rosen pass.
No, we love Mike Rothstein. We love Mike Rothstein. I was going to say, but by the way, think about Mike Rothstein, right? Think about poor Mike Rothstein. So Mike Rothstein for a number of years covered the Detroit Lions for us.
I know.
And then ESPN is like, listen, Mike, you've done such a good job. We're sending you to Atlanta to cover the Falcons. Poor Mike.
I know.
Poor guy.
You think he's not aware of this?
I mean, I just feel bad for. Listen, we love Mike. He's a big fantasy player as well. He's a friend of the podcast. He does a great job for us.
He's got a podcast called From the Perch.
Yeah, From the Perch. Good show. Good show.
Perch.
Yeah, so check it out if you want to listen
to it.
Anyway,
shout out to Mike and the From the Perch podcast. But the other thing here is, all jokes aside, when Michael says they're waiting for Calvin Ridley to come back, do we think Calvin Ridley's coming back? I don't want to here's that, I don't know what's going on with Calvin Ridley, and just on a human level, I hope Calvin Ridley takes as much time as he needs to get right. I don't want to cast any aspersions or any judgment or make any comments on that beyond the fact that I don't know, something clearly serious either is or has gone on in Calvin Ridley's life to make him want to step away from football. Yeah. And I think it's hard to be all right, well, it's been a couple of weeks, so you're good now, right? Stuff like this is
his
again, I don't want to.
There was one reference to it last night. I believe Joe and Troy did mention the earliest he could be back would be late November. He's got a minimum of 1 more game that by rule he is ineligible to play in. He's on the non-football injury list, so we could see him later. But the timeline is not team dependent. It's Calvin Ridley dependent. Sure. And so we'll just continue to think about him and hope that he is getting the help that he needs. Obviously, he fell to a very dark place, and he's an amazing football talent. But more importantly, he's a human just like the rest of us. We hope that he gets right when he can. So it's not, who knows when it's going to happen. But here's the bottom line. Falcons are tough right now. They're going to be an incredibly difficult watch until Cordarrelle Patterson is back. The only player that I think is useful in this offense is Kyle Pitts, and that's because of the fact that he plays tight end, not even because he has been remarkable in recent games.
Listen,
I know. You're laughing.
Cordarrelle
Patterson, right?
The idea that at the beginning of the year that at some point we would seriously say the phrase, and by the way, I 100% agree with you, but the idea that we would seriously say at some point during the season, this offense won't work until Cordarrelle Patterson gets back. It's just mind-boggling on so many levels.
2021's been weird, man. We got to get moving, though. So the Falcons, tough watch. Patriots, good win for them, but both teams not necessarily going to have a ton of lineup locks for you. We'll come back and discuss all sorts of injuries, but first, do you own or rent your home?
Sure.
Sure you do, and I bet it can be hard work, but you know it's easy? Bundling policies with Geico.
Really?
Geico, yes. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowners or renters insurance along with your auto policy. And it's a good thing, too, because you already have so much to do around your home.
Where can I go?
You go to geico.com, get a quote, and see how much you could save.
Wow.
It's Geico easy. Visit geico.com today. That's geico.com.
Let's go, football fans. Join Tom Brady, Larry Fitzgerald, and Jim Gray on SiriusXM each week throughout the NFL season for Let's Go. Be sure you're making Let's Go part of your Monday football routine. Find out what makes Tom and Larry two of the greatest of all time and get their insights on what's happening around the NFL. Every Monday night at 6 p.m. Eastern on Mad Dog Sports Radio, Channel 82. And listen wherever you want with the SiriusXM app.
Alrighty, we are back in time to go through a bunch of injury updates with Stephania. And Stephania, I don't think I'm exaggerating here. I believe Lamar Jackson has missed practice in 4 different weeks this year due to an illness.
Right.
This is one of them.
So much so that Jamison Hensley, who covers the team for us, actually wrote an article about the frequency of Lamar Jackson missing practice due to illness because it's become a thing now. Non-COVID related, according to the team, but still sidelined because of illness. And it's been a factor. I mean, the article, the gist of it is that Lamar Jackson shows up ready to play no matter what, and the team doesn't have concerns outside of, just hoping that he gets healthy when he needs to. But yeah, this is pretty remarkable. Didn't practice at all this week, again, because of an illness.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on whether it actually could prevent him from playing against Chicago, but as Jameson wrote, seems like he still finds a way to show up. He's quarterback 1 in our consensus ranks for this week. Justin Herbert popped up on the injury report this week too, Stephania. No major cause for concern though, right?
I don't think so. I just wanted it on here as something for people to pay attention to because he was listed as a full participant yesterday, but he showed up because of an oblique injury. And we talked about this with Jared Goff. We got Jared Goff not practicing, maybe not going to play because of an oblique injury. They're not necessarily a small thing when you're a thrower. So I definitely want to see what happens with Justin Herbert in today's practice. This could be minor and they're just required to report it, but nonetheless, just make sure you double check his status. Chargers host the Steelers on Sunday night. The Cardinals go to Seattle looking to snap their 1-game losing streak. Do you think they'll have either their quarterback, Kyler Murray, or their star wide receiver, DeAndre Hopkins? I feel like this is the daily crystal ball question. You're trying to read something and you're not really getting a hint from the team. I give them a lot of credit for not really sharing what they plan on doing. I mean, we know Kyler Murray's feeling better. He's been very clear about that with the media. We know he's participating in practice on a limited basis, so we know his ankle is actually doing better. But will it be enough for them to allow him to play? Or are they just going to hold him out an additional week and give him that extra extended rest? I don't think we're going to know. Maybe we'll have a better idea after Friday. So far, the Arizona Cardinals have taken this down to game time decisions. It's been very cryptic. I feel like physically he's close. My sense is if we were in week 17 or 18, it was a critical time or playoff time, there'd be no question. So I think he's very, very close. DeAndre Hopkins, meanwhile, I expect to sit out.
Wow, another week for DeAndre Hopkins. Remember that injury, Thursday night game.
Yep.
He got banged up early.
Yeah.
He left the game.
He had one big catch in that game.
And he put himself back into the game, much to the chagrin of his head coach, Cliff Kingsbury. So hopefully that wasn't what set him back further. But at this point, it's hard to tell whether that is the case or not.
Well, I think what set him back in that game was playing in that game. Because it was that one thing that he did where he slowed down and sped up with a hamstring it's a reminder you can't ask players to play and be at 70%.
No,
they just go all out.
It's also a reminder that nothing good comes from hustling.
Right.
and stop with the different speeds. Go one. I like a one steady speed, and you know what I don't do?
Speed
pull
up?
hamstrings.
Right.
No, I'm steady. They're made of Cheese Whiz. I'm just listen. I'm a slow,
Cheese
steady
Whiz
pace.
is pretty flexible. Probably be okay with that.
There you go. Exactly right. I'm just saying, nothing good comes from hustling.
We just learned that once again. Stephania, the Steelers, we just mentioned the Chargers play the Steelers and their quarterback could be slightly compromised. The Steelers might not have their starting quarterback at all as Ben Roethlisberger remains on the COVID-19 list.
Remains on the COVID-19 list. Mike Tomlin's been very clear that Ben is participating as much as he can through virtual meetings. Mike Tomlin pulling out his Motel 6 reference saying, we will leave the light on for him, meaning he will let him come down to the wire. He doesn't care if it comes down to Saturday afternoon when they have to activate a player to their final roster. Interestingly, Brooke Pryor, who covers the team, said they could activate Ben in the hopes that he becomes available by Sunday. But I would like to think that we'll have a definitive idea by Saturday.
Saturday, 4 p.m. Eastern time, a notable time to watch there. Saints got some bad news yesterday as their star running back Alvin Kamara went in the wrong direction.
It's worth noting real quickly before we move over Ben, that's the Sunday night game.
Yeah.
But you think we'll know definitively? I mean, what Stephania's saying is that if I'm reading this right, I just want to make sure I got this right. There's a chance he could be activated on Saturday, but still not play on Sunday. That they could activate him, just
They
with
could
the
put
hopes.
him to the active roster in the hopes that he could be available Sunday. Because again, these daily assessments,
Right.
and she made it sound like they would consider that as an option. So
My guess is knowing the player involved, knowing the implications of the game, there will be a reporting on Sunday morning about whether Ben Roethlisberger is expected to start or not on Sunday night. My guess.
That would be hope. We would certainly hope that, but I just think it's worth noting that it is the Sunday night game. It is it is a Sunday night game, and so without definitive reporting, it's just something to be aware of in terms of the timing for the players around Ben and Ben, of course, himself.
Some running back news, Stephania.
In case someone wanted to just see like Sunday news, like where would they go to find
Great
it?
call. You could watch 10 a.m. Eastern time on Sunday on ESPN News, Fantasy Football Now. At 11 o'clock, we head over to ESPN2. I'm not entirely, it might be F1. I'm not sure what it is. F1, which runs before us on ESPN2. So from 10 to 11 on ESPN News, 11 to 1 on ESPN2, Fantasy Football Now. Check it out. We'll have all the latest information for you at that time.
It's a really good show. Almost everyone from this show is on that show.
Yeah,
right.
And you can watch it if you can't get you should be able to also watch it on ESPN.com and the ESPN app. If
ESPN
you
app authenticated. There we go.
Authenticated. Yeah.
All right, Stefania, let's get back to you.
Almost everyone on the show is on the show.
Running back injuries, Stefania. The Saints are dealing with the possibility.
Kyle is not on the show.
Correct.
Mike Clay's
But
on the
he'll
show,
be
though,
great.
right?
Yes,
Mike Clay's on the show.
great.
Mike Clay is on the show. All right.
Mike Clay's on the show. Just
I'm
Kyle.
so
is
sorry, Field.
Kyle's not on
No,
the
it's
show.
okay. Stefania's on the show, and Alvin Kamara might be a topic on the show, Stefania. What do we know about him?
he did not practice on Thursday after doing a little bit of work on Wednesday. So everybody's antenna went up. It looked like a step backwards, but in talking to Mike Triplett this morning, we're still not sure whether this really means he's going to be out. There's still a chance that he's available. I think it certainly skews towards the likelihood that we don't see Alvin Kamara this week. But until they definitively rule him out, door's still open.
Yeah, this could be a management thing, right? The Seahawks every week give one day off to DK Metcalf, often Thursday. So perhaps it's Wednesday, you practice a little bit. Thursday, you kind of test it all out to make sure you're still good. Maybe Friday we'll see him back out there on the field. We know that if Alvin Kamara is out, Mark Ingram would be in as the starter. He was RB8 last week. Some good news for Cleveland, Stephania. They got it this morning in regards to Nick Chubb.
Yes, finally activated off the COVID-19 list. So Nick Chubb now available.
My advice is that you should start Nick Chubb on Sunday against the Lions. Moving forward here, Stephania, a couple more injuries at running back. Eli Mitchell for your 49ers. Don't believe we've seen him so far this week on the practice field.
Now, he's been out there, but in a blue non-contact jersey, so he's just doing work on the side. Eli Mitchell broke his finger during the game. People weren't even really sure when it happened. He did undergo a procedure, and Kyle Shanahan told Nick Wagner, who covers the team for us, that he did think that it was likely that Eli Mitchell could play this weekend. Now, here's what I'll say about this. Is that people are asking questions like, how can someone like Will Fuller be out for a month with a finger fracture? Eli Mitchell potentially plays within the same week. What they haven't disclosed is which finger it is. There's many, many different kinds of injuries, as we saw with the detail in Russell Wilson. So just because you have a fracture doesn't mean they're the same, different parts of the finger, et cetera, different responsibilities, and could impact whether you're able to control the ball or not.
Right.
But Eli Mitchell could be out there. But if he's still a little bit struggling with ball control, what have you, it could mean that his workload isn't as much. So
Interesting.
Let's see what happens in practice today. I'll be interested to see if he takes any contact at all before they have the game. But as of right now, it sounds like he's got a good shot to play.
Just a reminder, they play on Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern time, so plenty of time to pivot if he is not available against Jacksonville. Let's go forward to a couple more injury updates on the running back, Stephania. Jeremy McNichols for the Titans has been unavailable so far this week.
Concussion protocol for him, so he has not practiced. And, as you get later in the week, if you haven't practiced at all by Friday, it's usually not a great sign for your availability on the weekend.
We saw Rhamondre Stevenson play last week after not practicing for the Patriots, but at least keep an eye on this one with Jeremy McNichols. I think if that's the case, he does not play. We know where this one's trending. I think Deontay Foreman actually is the most interesting of these Titans running backs, creeping inside the top 25-ish with Adrian Peterson having a chance to get you 10 points as well. You know why? They're playing the Texans on Sunday. Obviously, Titans are a heavy favorite in this game. I do expect them to be able to run the football very, very effectively on Sunday. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Stephania, has not played in quite some time. The Chiefs' offense has managed just fine without him, but they got a big test on Sunday against Dallas. Do you think we'll see CEH?
It's interesting because Andy Reid had said at the start of the week that he thought there was a decent chance that Clyde Edwards-Helaire would be available in play. Nothing has changed yet as far as his status, but it's worth noting that Andy Reid also said that he and Rick Burkholder, their head athletic trainer, would certainly take into consideration the fact that they have a bye next week, and maybe that would factor into whether they chose to activate Clyde Edwards-Helaire this week or not. He said if he's ready, he'll go, but still, in the context of all of that, it certainly makes you think they might go the conservative route with him.
Weekly reminder that players who have not yet been activated to the roster do not appear on the injury report. So if you're saying, I don't see CEH on the injury report for Kansas City, he's not yet back on the roster for KC. Allen Robinson pops up on the injury report, Stephania, for the Bears. He's been there quite a bit this season. What's he dealing with?
Well, he's been there quite a bit with an ankle issue. We saw him play through it every week. I think he was on there 4 consecutive weeks, played through each time. This is a little different. Now he's got a hamstring injury. Hamstring injury in wide receiver, not great. Hasn't practiced at all this week. And so we are very much in limbo as of Friday morning. We'll see if he practices today and what kind of shot he has to play this weekend.
They play Baltimore on Sunday. Obviously, Robinson's the kind of guy that has fallen out of your lineup locks, but would potentially impact the value of Justin Fields. Maybe somebody like Darnell Mooney if he is unavailable on Sunday. A couple of Monday Night Football injury updates, Stephania. The Gronk AB news seems to be tale of 2 different directions right now.
Yeah, well, so actually, Rob Gronkowski, full participant in practice for the first time since week 3.
Yep.
I mean, it's been since week 3. We haven't seen him because of the rib fractures, the lung injury, then the back spasms. He played in that game, I think it was 5 offensive snaps before he exited because of back spasms. So this is his first full practice. Bruce Arians had made it very clear he wanted him to be fully ready to go with no hesitation before he activated him again. So we'll see. Good news so far. If it repeats on Friday, maybe a chance to see Gronk this weekend. Antonio Brown still dealing with the ankle issue. Yesterday was out catching passes from the jugs machine, ran a few routes for Tom Brady, but he's still not practicing. And I think there's not really a question in my mind that he's not going to be available this week.
Brown obviously embroiled right now in the potential controversy surrounding a possible fake COVID-19 vaccination card that was reported by the Tampa Bay Times yesterday. The NFL has said they'll look into the matter, so we'll see whether or not that impacts Antonio Brown's availability at all. But for now, in terms of Monday night, the more pertinent issue for his availability is that ankle issue. He sounds unlikely. The Giants got some good news, but it's the Giants. It can't always be all good news on the injury front, Stephania. What do you know about Saquon, Kenny Golladay, Sterling Shepard, and Kadarius Toney?
So let's start with the really good news, which is that Kenny Golladay and Kadarius Toney are both off the injury report. They're not there at all. So they are both going to be good to go for Monday night. Saquon Barkley, limited in practice, but certainly he's been doing quite a bit more. Remember, he injured his ankle a while back and then was on the reserve COVID-19 list. Got activated off of that, but not enough time to really get the ankle in shape, ready to go. Sounds like he could be available Monday night. And then Sterling Shepard has a quad injury, and he's been working on the side so far. Again, with it being a Monday night game, there's a little bit of chance for him to bump up. Our friend Jordan Ronan, who covers the teams, that don't rule Sterling Shepard out just because he was working on the side yesterday. Still a chance for him to play.
More updates again on Sunday, Fantasy Football Now, if need be, as it pertains to the Giants and the Bucs and everybody else of note. Let's ask this question. Is this player a lineup lock as we move forward to some of the more interesting ones of the week? But before we talk about Russell Wilson, Stephania, in terms of his lineup lock viability, I want to ask you about his teammate in the backfield, Chris Carson, whether we saw any signs of him yesterday on the practice field, and then whether there's any concern at all about Russ and the residual impact of that finger surgery.
Yeah, I think for Chris Carson, we're still in that mode of the team being very concerned about what the future holds for him. So right now, for fantasy purposes, I would say just presume no Chris Carson. As far as Russell Wilson, he's actually off the injury report now.
Good.
So but as of yesterday, his status completely changed. Wednesday, he was still listed on it, even though he was a full participant. Yesterday, completely removed from it. So I think that tells you where everybody feels like he stands in terms of his health. I don't think the finger itself was bothering him last week. I think the rust, the fact that he was away and maybe getting used to throwing with a finger that is a little bit limited in terms of its range of motion, et cetera, is something he had to adapt to. But they did operate out of the shotgun pistol virtually all of the snaps yesterday, every play. They had practiced with him under center. There was a conversation about whether they would mix it up a little more this week. It's not really clear yet whether they're going to do, but they're definitely getting more comfortable with him handling the ball in every kind of setup and situation.
Seems almost blasphemous to ask this question, Matthew, but should Russell Wilson be a lineup lock for you this weekend against Arizona?
No. I mean, he is on my hate list this week, so there's that. And then the other piece of it is that, like, what about last week made you feel good about Russell Wilson in any way, shape, or form? I mean, like,
not much.
He looked awful, right? I mean, by the way, it's a tough matchup against Arizona. One time has a quarterback scored 20 fantasy points or more versus Arizona, right?
Okay,
Only 3 times has a quarterback scored 16 fantasy points. And again, like, whatever, 16, 17, 18 fantasy points, it's fine, right? I mean, it's not like, 20 is a high bar to clear, but when you have Russell Wilson, that's what you're expecting. And so I have him outside my top 10. I think I'm ranked lowest than I have all season long. I'm nervous a little bit about him. So I think he's a mid-tier QB2 this week, which is fine. But I don't expect him. Should he be a lineup lock? No. Am I automatically putting Russell Wilson in my lineup without thinking about what other options are available to me? No, I am not. I think he'll be fine. I think he will play better than he did last week. They're at home, which is helpful. And we'll see, by the way, the Cardinals, I know it doesn't totally affect the defense, but it does on this level. It's different if Kyler Murray plays, right? I mean, because like if it's Colt McCoy or somebody else under center, their offense isn't as good. The drives aren't as sustained. Maybe there's turnovers. Seattle gets the ball in short territory, in good territory. So it's a little bit hard, but the simple answer to your question is Russell Wilson still a lineup lock? The answer is no for me.
That was 1 week too early on my Colt McCoy skepticism. Dang it. He looked so average, below average last week.
He did, but that wasn't the week that I guaranteed 15 fantasy points.
You did not guarantee it.
I did not guarantee it.
I guaranteed
it 2 weeks prior, and he came through for me. Anyway, I have Russell Wilson at 14, and as do you, I notice here on my little sheet.
Yeah, I'm with you the same way. Yeah. No, I think I understand it totally. We talked at the beginning of the year how, like, are you really going to be benching this top-tier quarterback for this streaming option? This is an example of where there are options that I would feel more comfortable with than Russell Wilson. Now, of course, I'll go off for 9 touchdowns this week because we said that. But, yes, there are other players, whether it's a Joe Burrow type, for example. Derek Carr maybe in that same game where you could justify playing them over Russell Wilson. Mike Williams plays the Steelers Sunday Night Football, Matthew. That much we know. But we don't know who's going to play because he has been very much a yo-yo player in the past, well, let's call it 10 weeks, right? He has been really the past 4 seasons in 10 weeks. So is there anything that you can use this week? Is it whether it's a matchup, whether it's anything you've heard from the coach, Brandon Staley, this week about getting him the football more? Or are you simply, is it like a blind decision if you make the choice to play him this week?
Pretty much that.
Yeah.
It's a couple of things. It's number one is you don't feel like you have better options. You don't feel like you have options with as much upside because there's tremendous upside here, right? The Steelers defense comes in at less than full strength. They're going to have some key pieces missing in this game.
Maybe no TJ Watt, maybe no Joe Hayden. Yeah, they're all
maybe
kinds.
No Minkah Fitzpatrick.
That's right. Yep.
So
he could be out. Yep.
Right. So, and we did get a couple of red zone targets last week. Okay. So you're hanging your hat on the offense will play better. It's a better matchup than it might appear initially. And, he's a big play guy that all he needs is one. Could they get him a touchdown? I mean, that's what you're hanging your hat on. There's nothing in terms of recent history that you can really hang your hat on. If there's one thing, I guess it's the fact that, again, after a stretch where he was getting no red zone or end zone targets, I feel like last week he got a couple. And Thirsty Kyle, you can correct me on that one, pop in on that one. But, I feel like last week he got a couple. So that's what you're hanging your hat on.
I agree on that one.
I'm at 27.
Yeah, Matthew,
I'm a low-end wide receiver 3.
We've reached this point of the season, right, where there are players, and this next wide receiver falls into the same category. It's DJ Moore for the Carolina Panthers. If you asked me what kind of contract, I know this is a weird way of getting to the point that I'm trying to make, but if DJ Moore became a free agent tomorrow, and the NFL open free agency tomorrow. DJ Moore would probably get a contract for like 5 years and $20 million per season, right? The league views DJ Moore as one of the best wide receivers in football. He is electric. He was incredible to begin the year. The quarterback play has fallen off a cliff for Carolina, and I know that Cam Newton has been a jolt of energy to this franchise, and we're all thrilled to see him back, not just in the NFL, but specifically in Carolina. But recently, Carolina's quarterback play has been so poor that DJ Moore's value has largely fallen off a cliff. And while Cam Newton looked like an improved passer in preseason for the Patriots, last year he was not a good passer for the second half of the season with the Patriots. I've got him at 19. You've got him at 21. I feel like the same decision you're making with Mike Williams is being made by DJ Moore. Too talented that anything could happen, but you also are preparing for yourself for the possibility that he goes for like 3 catches and 31 yards.
Yeah, that's exactly right. What you're hoping there is that Cam Newton lifts this offense. It's a more productive offense. It's one that sustains drives more, and that DJ Moore is pure talent because he's on the short list of best receivers in the NFL just on a pure talent basis.
Right.
Wins out here. That's really what you're banking on. He's had under 60 receiving yards in 3 straight. He's been scoreless in 6 straight games. A little bit of maybe he's due.
Maybe he's due.
That's what you're hoping for.
Right.
But again, there's nothing in recent history that you can hang your hat on. What you're hanging your hat on if you're starting DJ Moore is still getting good target share.
Mm-hmm.
That passing offense still runs through him.
Yep.
We expect the offense to be better under Cam Newton, more efficient, maybe in scoring position more often. And he's super talented. Washington played well last week, but traditionally, so far for much of this year, they've been a brutal defense. And so even last week in a game in which the Washington defense played well, Mike Evans still scored a touchdown, an easy touchdown. Like, could there be a blown coverage? Easily. That's what you're hanging your hat on here if you're starting DJ Moore this week.
We'll come right back and talk about a couple of players. I
was just going to add, Thirsty Kyle got to me real quickly. Mike Williams, 6 red zone looks over his last 2 games. So I was right on that. So he's gotten 6 red zone looks over his last 2 games, 0 in the 4 games prior. So if there's something else you want to hang your hat on Mike Williams, at least the last couple of games, they've started to look for him in close more than they have the previous 4 games.
Let's get to some players that that have an opportunity, I should say, to stay hot this week after a good game last week. And we go to your Washington football team and
Sure.
Antonio Gibson. They play, of course, the Carolina Panthers, who we were just talking about with DJ Moore, Matthew. So there were a couple of things that were encouraging last week for Antonio Gibson. Obviously, 2 touchdowns encouraging. That's really good, right?
Yeah.
Especially in a bad matchup against a very good Bucs defense. He had 78 yards. That's good, too. But some smaller signs that I thought were useful as well. He ran 15 routes last week. That's the same number that J.D. McKissic ran. I can't imagine a scenario where all of a sudden Antonio Gibson becomes the guy that's running way more pass routes than J.D. McKissic. But the fact that the scales are evening a little bit is encouraging for me. Are you feeling as confident as those numbers would suggest you should feel going into this week?
Yeah, a little bit. Here's the other thing that I thought, and Stephania, tell me if you agree here, but I thought he looked healthy. Like, Antonio Gibson has been battling through this shin injury for the last couple of weeks. Finally, I was like, oh, yeah, that's Antonio Gibson.
Right.
Stephania, I don't know. You have more trained than I do for that kind of stuff. But to my dumb eyes, Antonio Gibson looked like finally he was fully healthy.
He looked better. I don't know that he is or isn't. He's still in the injury report. He's still listed with that. They're still managing his reps in practice. I think they've sort of found this workable scenario where he can limit his reps during the week in practice, and then he plays on the weekend, and maybe he is turning the corner in terms of the healing process and feeling better and a little more confident. I would say he ran kind of, there was some hesitation there. He just didn't look like a super confident runner, but as I've said before, it's hard to feel that way when you have a stress fracture. So maybe he is turning a corner there.
And
We'll
Stephania,
see.
he's not the only...
I'm not 100% confident with a lot of these players on that team right now because they're all banged up.
Right, including 2 tight ends, Stephania. I wanted to ask you about
it. Like Logan Thomas with this hamstring issue, I don't know why it's been suggested really that he would be so close. Ever since he did that one running workout, he has not been seen doing anything of significance. He's not been cleared to return to practice. So Logan Thomas is a non-factor right now. But Ricky Seals-Jones, who's been the one to step up, has a hip injury. He has not practiced yet this week. So there's no guarantee that he's going to be available. Obviously, we want to see if he does anything today. I believe they're practicing shortly. But Ricky Seals-Jones, not a lock to play this week either.
Do you know who the third string tight end is for the Washington football team, Matthew?
John Bates.
John Bates, that's right, the 5th round pick out of Boise State. So it sounds like he could be the man that starts for them on Sunday. I don't know if there's any fantasy value there, but we hope that Logan Thomas and RSJ are back on the field sometime soon.
Yeah, I would not count on either guy this week. I mean, you just hear Stephania talking about that, and for whatever it's worth, just saw from Rhiannon Walker, who covers the team. She tweeted out not seeing Ricky Seals-Jones with the tight ends so at practice. So at least at the moment, doesn't appear as if Ricky Seals-Jones is practicing. It's going on right now. So at least the portion open to the media, at least according to one report, he's not out there. So not looking good for RSJ or Logan Thomas on Sunday. Back to Antonio Gibson real quickly. The offensive line is healthier as well. I think that's an important part here, and something that we talked about earlier in the week. I don't expect Carolina to blow out Washington in this game.
I agree.
I
think Washington might win.
I think Washington has a good shot at winning. The line is 3. The game's in Carolina. Carolina's -3. So basically, Vegas saying we think these teams are evenly matched. And my expectation here is that if Carolina wins, it'll be on the ground, a lot of Cam Newton. It'll be grinded out. It's not going to be a high-flying attack where all of a sudden Washington finds itself down 17-0 or something like that, and all of a sudden they've got to use J.D. McKissic a lot, and they're in a hurry-up offense. So I think you will see a nice workload here from Antonio Gibson on Sunday.
I want to ask Matthew about Devontae Smith in a second, but I'll start with Stephania on 2 injury updates in Philadelphia, Miles Sanders and Dallas Goedert.
Yeah, Miles Sanders, looks like he could be making his return this week. He's been back at practice. Remember, he's been out with the ankle injury. And Nick Sirianni said if Miles Sanders is ready to go and healthy, he will be our starter. So that is the expectation. It's also, every so often I look at what the players are tweeting, and Miles Sanders retweeting a couple of tweets that are highlights from the last time that they played the Saints. So, take that for what it's worth. But it looks like he'll be back out there. Dallas Goedert with a concussion, not practicing so far.
Okay. I think he was upgraded to limited, though, yesterday. Am I wrong on Dallas Goedert? I think he might have been upgraded limited. If we can double-check that just in case. But he is not fully clear concussion protocol, but it sounds like there's at least a glimmer of hope for Dallas Goedert. Just quickly, Matthew, on Miles Sanders, he's the starter. What does that really mean? Does that mean he should be a starter in your lineup? Or is he to me, he feels like a flex play at best.
I agree. Look, you're certainly encouraged by the last couple of weeks, right? Last 2 weeks, he's the number 1 wide receiver in total points. So that's all positive. Having said that, it's been up and down, and my expectation here is that he sees at least some Marshawn Lattimore on Sunday.
Yeah.
Right? And so my expectation here is that what you're hoping for with Devontae Smith is you're hoping for a touchdown. Right? I mean, by the way, and he's scored the last 2 weeks, so he's been great. Yeah. But tough matchup here. Tough to count on this. Tough to count. He hasn't been getting a ton of volume. You know what I mean? The Eagles more recently, last couple of weeks, have become a run-first team.
They have been. So, Stephania, by the way, I said did you?
Yeah. No, thanks for calling. Sometimes when there's 40,000 injuries, I skip my notes. And Dallas Goedert, he did have his helmet on yesterday. He ran a few routes and caught a few passes in the portion open to the media. So he did end up being listed as limited, but it's unclear if he was participating in any team drills.
Fantasy Football Now, Sunday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, ESPN News, 11 a.m. move over to ESPN2. And just to put a bow on this Miles Sanders thing.
Almost all the people on this show are on that show,
correct.
too.
That's correct. Just one last.
Let's find a role for Kyle.
Yeah, we could. I'm sure.
Let's figure out a way to get Kyle into the show.
Oh, Matthew, every so often.
Every once in a while you're good on the show, and that was it.
The comedy is real.
On Miles Sanders, by the way,
man.
I don't feel confident starting Miles Sanders this week, even if he does play. I think that while he could be the starter, being the starter could mean that he has 40% of the snaps to the 30 for Jordan Howard to the 20 for Kenneth Gainwell to the 10 for Boston Scott, right? He definitely is the most talented out of that crew, but I think he'd be Low-end RB2, high-end flex range for me this week, even with just 2 teams on a bye. All right, let's get to some love-hates. Dan, you're looking at me like, nope, never mind. You were not. Let's get to some love-hates, Matthew. And a player that makes the love list this week for the Houston Texans is Brandon Cooks.
Brandon Cooks makes the love list so far. Look, and I get it. It's, been an up and down year for Brandon Cooks. But here's the positives, right? When Tyrod Taylor is under center for the Texans, and he will be on Sunday against Tennessee, he's averaging 17.5 fantasy points per game. He averages almost 12 targets per game in that stretch, and 9 different wide receivers have scored 20 or more fantasy points against the Tennessee Titans. So I get it. The Titans have played much better defense recently. You see a lot of these stats about how many fantasy points they've given up to wide receivers, and they've played a lot better recently. But whether it's junk time or just massive volume, it may not be super efficient. But like with Tyrod Taylor under center, Brandon Cooks has like a 30% target share. Like Tyrod Taylor is a professional quarterback, and I say that as a compliment, not as an insult. He will get the ball to Brandon Cooks. There's going to be enough volume there that I think Brandon Cooks has a nice game this week. I have him as a top 15 wide receiver in week 11.
It is time to go for 2, brought to you by Truly Hard Seltzer. With a pair of Bengals this weekend, Matthew Berry. Let's talk about both Joe Burrow and T. Higgins. I want to know what it is, because they both look like they have a real nice matchup here this week. Both of them make your love list.
They do, in fact, make my love list. I think what I said is that we won't have seen Bengal Tigers this exciting in Vegas since Siegfried and Roy.
Wow.
There you go.
How long did that take you to think of?
I mean, Tiger joke Vegas, pretty much led me right there, to be candid. Look, here's one of the reasons why I like Joe Burrow so much, right? Last 4 weeks, Vegas allowing touchdown passes at the second highest rate. One qualified quarterback so far this season, Joe Burrow, the 3rd highest touchdown rate. He's had multiple touchdown passes in 8 of 9 years. 8 of 9 games so far this year. Over 250 passing yards in 6 straight games. After early in the season, Cincinnati was being very limited with Joe Burrow in terms of like, hey, we want to be run heavy. We want to make sure the knee's okay coming off the injury. But more recently, they've been like, let it fly, Joe. And this is a good matchup against Las Vegas, especially for T. Higgins. Look, you're already starting Jamar Chase, right? Top 5 player. No question about it. But T. Higgins, if you look at the underlying numbers, I think he's due for a big game, and I think it comes this Sunday, right? Raiders 6th against wide receivers, right? T. Higgins, double-digit fantasy points in 6 of 7 games so far this year. He's had over 100 air yards and an end zone target in 3 straight games. Like, they're trying to get him the ball, and it just hasn't worked out. But against Las Vegas, I feel like it will work out. I am as a top 18 fantasy wide receiver. He comes in at 20 in the consensus ranks. I'm at 18, so slightly higher than the consensus. T. Higgins, Joe Burrow, both on the love list in week 11.
Pick every NFL matchup for a shot at prizes with Pigskin Pick'em, presented by Truly Hard Seltzer. Play at ESPN.com/pigskinpick'em or on the ESPN Fantasy app.
I just want you guys to know that if I had a niche skill that I'm exceptional at, it's remembering for my Pigskin Pick'em picks to make them in like the 3rd quarter of the Thursday night football game. Right? Like, wow,
so
like I definitely forgot to make my pick.
Every week.
Yeah. Okay. So we're in this niche category of strengths together.
Oh, 1,000%.
I have another
Stephania
question
as well. Okay.
You
and then Stephania.
Okay. Well, no, Stephania, you go first.
Oh, I was just going to tell you, Lamar Jackson has returned to practice.
There you go.
Lamar Jackson back in practice after missing 2 days with an illness, and therefore would look on track to play.
Love that. Matthew, doth mine eyes deceive me, or do you have 2 Bears on the love list coming off of a bye week?
Your eyes do not doth receive and deceive you.
Okay.
What are we doing here?
I
don't know.
I just figured,
Your eyes doth not deceive you.
Is that what I was wanting to say?
That's what he was hoping you would say in return
Matthew
to what
and
he said.
Listen, we're master thespians with all the stuff that we've done on the fantasy show, and so I thought I would talk
we or you?
No, Matthew and I both.
We both are.
Yeah, we're both thespians. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You know what the worldwide box office for me and Daniel combined is?
A
lot.
Wow.
Almost $1 billion.
Almost $1 billion?
Almost $1 billion in worldwide box office between the two of us. If you combine all the movies we've been in, it's almost $1 billion in worldwide box office.
Wasn't Daniel in like Scream 3 or something?
No, I should be, though. I should really be in a movie at this point, don't you think?
Yes, totally. I can't think of a reason why not to.
Our friend offered,
yes, absolutely. Our V Foundation winner, we are definitely going to jump in and do a
he said we're going to do an 06710 script.
Okay.
Exactly. By the way, I heard from him kidney transplant went well. They're
that's
recovering
awesome.
nicely, and
So good.
of course his wife Trish is absolutely still crushing in fantasy.
Naturally.
Anyway, good to hear from them. So anyway, yes, in terms of the Bears and love list, let's go there. Justin Fields makes the love list. I am at 16. I think he's a viable QB2. I think he's a viable streamer this week. I think if you were thinking about, I don't know if I'm looking for a replacement for Matthew Stafford. I'm nervous about Russell Wilson. I'm nervous about, Ben. I don't know that you would be starting Ben, but the fact of the matter is I think it's a good matchup here. Last 4 weeks, Ravens allow 22.4 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. That's 5th most in the NFL. Last 2 weeks, Justin Fields, again, he's coming off the bye, and we've talked about this, how I like quarterbacks off of a bye, especially rookies. Like I think he's had an extra week now to sort of get comfortable and not have to worry about an upcoming game. Last 2 weeks, weeks 8 and 9 that he played, he was QB3 in terms of total fantasy points, 43.4 fantasy points in those 2 weeks, 148 yards and a touchdown to the ground in terms of rushing. And by the way, gets David Montgomery back, which I think helps that offense. He came back in the game before they went on bye, got a full workload, now should be fully healthy out of the bye as well. Ravens allow running back rushing touchdowns at the 3rd highest rate. I think he's going to get massive volume here. He played 85% of the snaps in his game that he returned here. So you think, to me, the volume that David Montgomery is going to get, it's not a matchup that scares against Baltimore. I have David Montgomery as running back 13, higher than our consensus ranks of 16. I have Justin Fields as a viable QB streamer this week. Both guys made the love list, which is always about expectations. I expect both guys to do better than their normal given expectations in a week.
I got to tell you, I'm really looking forward to this game for a lot of reasons. The Ravens got humbled last Thursday night against Miami, but that baby bye helps them. What does Lamar Jackson look like? He's obviously back at practice, as Stephania mentioned. But also, how did the Bears look coming out of their bye? Right,
Yeah.
Justin Fields, 2 weeks prepare for this game. David Montgomery, not that he wasn't healthy in that Monday Night Football game against Pittsburgh, but should be even stronger in this game. Really looking forward to this matchup between these two teams who do not frequently play each other. We have a couple more minutes left here, Matthew. We talked about Saquon Barkley earlier. He does make the hate list for you this week.
Yeah, look, we expect him to play. I mean, he's trending in that direction, but I don't know that he's fully there yet. But listen, the Buccaneers have played really good run defense, and even if they don't have Vita Vea, right, I still think this is a tough matchup here. There's a couple of concerns here, right? So Tampa Bay allows the 2nd fewest rushing yards per game to opposing running backs. They're top 5 in yards before and after contact. And I don't know that he's going to be 100% healthy. So you got a bad matchup here.
Yep.
Do they immediately give him a full workload in his first game back? Especially, by the way, Tampa Bay coming off 2 losses. It's a Monday night crowd. Feel like they really get into it. I feel like there's a chance, certainly within the realm of possibilities, that Tampa Bay runs away this game and just crushes them, right? And
11-point favorites.
Right, exactly. So they're big home favorites. And so if the Giants suddenly fall out of this, do they say like, all right, you know what, Saquon, let's take a seat here. Listen, he's going to have some passing game usage, which is helpful. And he's Saquon Barkley. And, we don't expect Villa to play for the Buccaneers. So that weakens their defensive line. But still, I have Saquon Barkley at 16. I still have him as an RB2, but that's lower than where he was drafted and lower where I would have a fully healthy Saquon Barkley in a decent matchup. So that's why he makes the hate list this week, is I have him as more of a mid to low tier RB2 this week than I do the top 10, 12 running back that he's been for much of the season.
Last one here. Tyler Lockett. We talked about him earlier on in the week, and you just mentioned how both of us are nervous about Russell Wilson in this game against Arizona. By that logic, should you be nervous about starting Tyler Lockett this Sunday?
You should be. I'm still doing it.
Okay.
I'm starting
YOLO?
a little bit of YOLO, a little bit. This is more of a gut call than anything.
Okay.
But looking at the last couple of
Guarantee?
games,
You going to guarantee something?
I do not want to guarantee. No, this one's not a. No. Believe me, when I feel it, when I know it.
No risk it, no biscuit, just for the record.
Fair enough, understood. But this one I don't feel
You
confident
reverse jinxed Tom Brady last week. You are on a heater. Like, you could do anything.
Factually correct.
You literally got a game ball.
I did. That was nice of Coach Rivera. Look, the fact here is that I feel like watching that Green Bay game, that they took a lot of shots to Tyler Lockett. He's getting, and I made this reference early in the week, but like, again, like John Paulson, great tweet just saying like, man, some version of Tyler Lockett is crushing in my air yards league. They took a lot of shots at Tyler Lockett, didn't connect. Russell Wilson was just so brutal last week, but my expectation is he'll be better this week. The game is at home. They need to get Tyler Lockett going. I expect him to have a nice game against Arizona. Again, all he needs is one play. Real risk-reward player, maybe the ultimate risk-reward player, but this week, I'm starting Tyler Lockett.
There you have it. Daniel, are the Lions winning this weekend or no?
Is Tim Boyle starting at quarterback?
Most likely, yes.
Tim Boyle, who has a total of -1 total yards in his 4-year NFL career.
But Tim Boyle went to high school not far from where we are right now. He went to high school at Xavier High School in Middletown, Connecticut, just steps away from the gorgeous Wesleyan University campus where I went to college. I used to go over there and watch those games. So if anybody's going to pull off the upset, it is Tim Boyle. Do not doubt Tim Boyle. You know who loves Tim Boyle?
Ooh.
Aaron Rodgers loves Tim Boyle.
Of course. Well, he was in Green Bay before.
Glowingly of him.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
Are you guaranteeing a victory for the
I am
Lions?
not.
I'll say this. Listen, it was my birthday this week. If there was ever a week for the Lions to give me a
Stars
victory,
are aligning.
this is the week. Also, I'm going to go to Salem, Mass. My girlfriend Rosie and I are going to Salem, Mass tonight to go see a show. Valley Heart and Lake St. Daniel. So if you guys are going to be in the Boston area, come hang out with us. We're going to be up there chilling.
Salem was a great town. You're going to have an absolute blast. That's going to be great. I'm so happy to get to enjoy a show
absolutely
during
will.
your birthday week.
By the way, it'd be amazing, if Tim Boyle leads the Lions to a victory.
Oh, my gosh.
And then there's a quarterback controversy.
There
Jared
will
Goff
not
versus
be
Tim
a controversy.
Boyle.
No,
Yeah.
I will roll with Tim Boyle at that point.
And they haven't lost this month, so you never know what could happen to the Lions on
I can't wait till
Sunday.
Daniel rolls in Monday morning wearing a Tim Boyle jersey.
Oh, my God. It'll be with the tattoo. A new tattoo. There you have it. All right, so for Matthew and Stephania and Daniel, I'm Field. We are back on Fantasy Football Now. Again, Sunday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern Time on ESPN News until we go over to ESPN2 from 11 to 1. We'll talk to you guys then, and we'll talk to you on Monday.
For Field, Daniel, and Stephania, I'm Matthew. Peace out.